Hi, it's David StarrTouch, founder of Survivor to Hero, helping you rock your hero story. Today was a really tough day. So last night there was the Vegas massacre. I was editing the document, this podcast series that I'm uploading, and when I saw it, and it just overwhelmed me. There were 20 dead when I just had to stop and get some rest. Oh man. Anyway, so what I did is I've decided to upload. I've made a few of these videos, and maybe I'll just put a whole series about this is what shock looks like. But anyway, I posted all of the Thrive series of the Signpost 1 on SoundCloud. It's 7 episodes, about 20 minutes each. We'll walk you through healing after trauma, and it's designed for PTSD, but it can do acute trauma. So if you the event itself, this is good knowledge to kind of go through. I'm going to be putting a video right now, the video you're watching. It's going to cut to the first episode of this series. It's called my podcast is called Positive Talk, and I've tried to put in some little text and editing, and it's too much. So I will just get these posted when I can. I can't upload them too faster to YouTube, but I'll try to do one a day, and at least they're all on SoundCloud. Put them on your iPod, listen to them, and let me know if it's helpful. You can use the YouTube area to comment and let me know what's working and what doesn't work. I'm going to be trying to add a little more visual to the YouTube channel. Additionally, for those who are experiencing PTSD, I will be getting my autogenic meditation up, which is a thing you can go through and help reset your nervous system. All this stuff is clinical. It tends to work. Things we've used in a clinical setting. Most people don't know about post-traumatic growth, and a lot of therapists don't. So if you're talking to a therapist and they've never heard of it, send them to this channel. Have them listen to this, because post-traumatic growth has been around for 20 years. As a therapist, I hadn't heard about it, which is why I'm sharing with you now. I've actually used this model to heal my own PTSD, as well as supplement it with some other lifestyle things, which we'll talk about. All right, it's David StarrTouch. I just wanted to record a little higher energy video, and I'll post the other ones so you can see what I'm talking about. But namaste. See you in the video. Hello, this is David StarrTouch, founder of Survivor to Hero, and you are on Positive Talk. This is a podcast really here to help support you. One of Survivor to Hero's goals is to reduce mental health stigma, and I myself am a Ph.D. candidate in psychology, I have a master's in clinical counseling, I am licensed in the state of Colorado, and I'm a certified professional coach. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics of positive psychology. Overall, in this show, you can expect to hear a positive look at various aspects in the news, in life, and particularly mental health and wellness. About last week, we recorded a YouTube doing a book review of one of the most poignant books that I've found. I would actually almost say this book was a revolution to come out as it did. It introduced a concept called post-traumatic growth. The book is titled, What Doesn't Kill Us? The New Psychology of Post-Traumatic Growth. Now, one of the things that shocked me as a clinician entering into my PhD program is that what I was attempting to do in research to help people heal from trauma and overcome, as I had, and use this program. Once I finished, I was going to market my program in a book and whatnot, and I discovered that everything I had wanted to do and to share with people had actually been researched for over 20 years, and no one had told me. Now, as a clinician, that was disturbing, because my research was on, basically post-traumatic growth, how people heal and overcome trauma. And there's a whole level of science on it, and what broke my heart is that it is not being taught. And honestly, so there's many therapists, if you're seeing a therapist for PTSD, they may have never heard the words post-traumatic growth before. And that's kind of shocking, but it's just mainly because this is a level of a part of positive psychology, a little bit of existentialism and humanistic psychology that is just not taught in a lot of mainstream psych. From a clinical perspective, we're often taught cognitive behavioral therapy and various methods that work, but we really didn't understand this overall process. Many people have healed from trauma on their own. Not just resilience, but they were actually traumatized. So resilience helps you kind of bounce back and be resistant to future traumas. Yes, they developed that, but their lives got better after the trauma. And that was what captured researchers' interest. This has been studied with cancer, terrorism, infidelities, spiritual trauma is what they refer to those, like a marriage and divorce and things like that can be very traumatic, not necessarily abuse or rape or things like that, but that was also studied. And so we found that it's much like addiction. There's a universal process people need to go through. In addiction, people have to go through 5 stages, for example: pre-contemplation, contemplation, pre-contemplation, I don't have a problem; contemplation, I have a problem, I'm not going to do anything about it; preparation, then action, and maintenance or termination. And in therapy, we have there's a various process the therapist it helps to be mindful of, but there's this process that everyone who experiences post-traumatic growth tends to go through. Now, unlike the stages of change, it is not, which is the addiction model I just went over, it is not linear. Everyone goes through it in their own way. The thing is, we have at least identified it and we understand it, and we can now, if we're aware, help people facilitate it in their lives. So that is what this book is. What Doesn't Kill Us Makes Us Stronger by Dr. Stephan Joseph. If you're interested, you can go to the Survivor to Hero YouTube. You can we've got a link on Amazon, and you can watch my my book review. Now, what I'm going to be doing I decided in this series of the podcast is I'm actually going to be going over the third section of the book it's called the Thrive model. And the Thrive model is Dr. Stephan Joseph's model that he presents, and it's like, it's clinically supported, and they researched and they've been using this in research, and so it's a relatively safe model for people to do on their own. He's actually guiding people through it and suggesting it in his book. What I'm going to do in this podcast is I'm actually going to be taking you through it myself. I'm going to read you various sections, and my goal with this is sometimes when we're dealing with trauma, and as particularly PTSD, it can be difficult to read things. And so I have this fantastic resource that may be very difficult for you to have access to. So I know when I was dealing with my own PTSD and struggling, I would have loved it if someone took the time to say, I know you're smart, I know you're intelligent, but let me read this to you so you don't have to. I know you're having trouble focusing and reading because your brain just keeps going out there in the thoughts. Well, my intention with this is to be able to read this to you, and then if you need to listen to it again, you can. I know audio and YouTube, at the time, YouTube was just barely a thing. People weren't actually using it for education when I was going through the recovery. But I know audio and various things like that was very helpful to me. I found books on tape and various audio programs, and I would listen to them. And maybe I'm an auditory learner, and that's what worked for me. And maybe you are too. So my goal is to help get this content out on as many different media platforms as possible. This is being recorded on a podcast now, partially because I'm a little shy on the video right now and I want to get a little bit better. But we're going to break this into about 22-minute segments. And I will be doing a brief overview of this book, very, very brief, before we start jumping in. And that way you can break this into basically manageable chunks of time, 22 minutes, and do it at your own pace. So just a little more overview about what you can expect from this channel. We're not just going to be talking about PTSD. We're going to talk about many different topics. Again, in the news, we're going to talk about mental health issues and stigmas. And I'm very honest and upfront about some of my mental health challenges because I find, if you want to really lead, you need to, or, create change, you need to lead. You have to lead by example and be the change you seek, so to speak. I have a background I taught yoga professionally in Washington, D.C. for 3 years. I've had a chance, I was doing 16 to 20 classes a week, and especially an early morning class at 6 a.m., which really taught me the value of meditation and being still. But most importantly, it really helped me being a teacher and in service of others, and then holding that space. So my hope is that I can hold that space for with you through these audio podcasts, and you can grow and heal at your own pace without any judgment wherever is best for you. Download those to your iPod, go for walks and things like that. Whatever you need to do, your phone, go for a nature walk and just listen to me, because YouTube, that's a lot of streaming of your data, and it can be helpful, but many people actually use YouTube in the background just to listen, and that's one of the things I think is helpful, to have multiple forms. So while I'll still be doing YouTube videos with various aspects of this, the people want a little higher energy and shorter time. And my goal is to cut down my time. I can tend to be a little wordy. So here you'll find me just kind of talking with you and hanging out and going over this topic and conversation. So let's get started without any further ado. That's a very long-winded introduction. And now that I've done it the first time, I'll keep it brief for next time. And before I start, I'm going to just pause this for a moment and take my medication for the day, which helps me on my ADD and focus and my own just general mental health. And I'll be right back. All right. So now I've had a sip of my Bing, a caffeinated healthy energy drink. You can watch my review of that on our Grace, Hope, and Strength channel. And if you go to Survivor to Hero, I will have links for our video, YouTube, and this podcast there. So if you're ever not sure how to find us, you can go to survivortohero.com. And we're also getting some URLs for those too, so you can just go to them a little easier without having to search YouTube. All right. One more thing before we start. I really want to stress that if you're on medication, such as I'm on just a general mood stabilizer called Wellbutrin. It works very well for me. Increases dopamine. I tend to think better. It treats ADD, depression, and mood stabilization, things like that. Most importantly, though, I found I need to take it at a particular time of day consistently. And when I miss a day or miss a dosage or 2 or 3, it tends to spiral out from there. Then I feel worse. So I was attempting to do some video blogs on that, and I decided, I'm going to just keep working on this and noticing it. But I wanted to share that with you. If you're taking any medication, dealing with mental health stuff, definitely try to find a consistent time of day that works best for you to take this medication. And therefore, your body will get used to it, your brain will get used to it, and you can kind of create a routine. And that's one less thing that you have to worry about. For me, that time is 1 p.m. because of my work schedule. I can consistently take that. Even when I work overnights in the hospital, I tend to sleep from 7:30 or 8 to noon to 1 p.m. And then it's time to get up and take my meds and then go from there. All right, so that's just my strategies of how we handle this. All right, I'm about halfway through my time for my first session, so thank you very much for your patience. And so the next 10 minutes, I'm just kind of going to go over this book for those who missed the book review. And we'll jump right in on the next section. So if you are really itching to just get into the content, you're not interested about the book as much or getting the overview, I will see you on the next blog. Otherwise, this book, Dr. Stephan Joseph, initially the background came to me. A friend of mine was asking me if I could recommend one book to understand trauma and post-traumatic growth. What would it be? Just one. She only had time to read one book, so she was a busy attorney and whatnot, but also dealing with major mental health stuff. And so I said, well, let me think. I have like 6 to 8 books that I really recommend. One is an overview of the field. That's a literature review. The others one's like a book to the therapists, clinical advice, and then there's just an overview of the research. I have several different books that have taken years of knowledge and put them in one place. But what book do I recommend? And this book jumped out at me. It's a really easy read. Dr. Stephan Joseph talks about post-traumatic growth a little bit, but also he shares a story about a trauma in which some people were on a cruise ship that crashed and was sinking. And there were a lot of traumatic experiences from that. So we can think of modern day Titanic. And you can imagine how scary that might be, etc. And he talks about the positive sides of trauma. And yes, there are positive sides. The emotional toll trauma takes, and the biology of trauma, which is very helpful, understanding how the brain changes. And that is like just in part 1 alone. Part 2, he really dives into the positive psychology. And with positive psychology, we're strength-based. This particular model, the Thrive model, with positive psychology and growth, focuses on transformation, how we transform. Now, when I'm working with clients, one of the first things I really try to instill, and so I want to share this with you especially, is that once a trauma happens, it kind of flips a switch inside. You lose some innocence, so to speak, and you start seeing the world from different eyes, from a new lens. Now, some people, like myself, this happened at a very young age. Other people, it happens later in life. Regardless of when it happens to you, the change is you become a different person. Who you were is not who you can be anymore. Because now it's like you've left the cave, you can see the sun. And that's actually from philosophy, I believe Plato's story of the cave, or myth of the cave. And now that you've seen the sun, you could never go back to living in the darkness because you're aware. Now, trauma has the reverse effect, or maybe that could be traumatic for those folks. But now that you've experienced trauma in a significant way that changed or shaped you, you can't be the same person you were. And the more you try to be who you were, the more you suffer. So there's this in-between of stabilizing from the trauma. We call that acute stress disorder. And when it doesn't get dealt with, or we are unable to process those acute feelings over time, it could become post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a very, very intense degree of that. The transformation aspect is really the key. Think of yourself in this moment, and this is an overused analogy, but it's appropriate, as the caterpillar who then goes into the chrysalis, and people take this next step. As the caterpillar thought its world was over and goes into its cocoon to die, it undergoes this transformation in which the caterpillar melts down into enzymes and building blocks and amino acids or whatnot, and then it emerges. It breaks from its cocoon. It struggles, and if you see a butterfly trying to get out, and you were to take scissors and cut that cocoon to help it out, it would die, because the struggle is what it would need to be able to flap its wings. There's this process of transformation, of just leaving the cocoon, that helps the butterfly gain the strength to fly. And my mother was visiting me recently, and there's a huge amount of monarchs coming through Colorado right now. Even saw some news story about someone who's afraid of butterflies, which we found rather entertaining. I'm sorry for that person, considering there were hundreds of thousands of butterflies flying through Colorado. And she told me a story about how once the butterflies were migrating through their area, and there were so many on the road, just in a stream, that they were actually, becoming issues like a driving hazard. And I just couldn't imagine hundreds of thousands of butterflies in a stream migrating south. And I just found that very entertaining. The idea that so many people can go through a transformation, or so many critters, and they all have this unique idea. So there's so much we have to learn about life still. If we take that model and we apply it to this transformation idea, he actually used the analogy of a shattered vase. And even if a vase shatters, you can never put the vase quite back together properly. You can use super glue, you can put all the pieces to get it its basic structure and form, but that vase will never be the same pristine it was. But at the same time, that vase will develop a new sense of character, its own unique sense of beauty in the random order of the breakage. And I really like the saying, why did we break and have these cracks? shine through. And once somebody said it's so the light can find its way through. And I think that is a healthy analogy. The more we can shift our perspectives, which is very much what positive psychology is, because you get to choose your reality. So in some parts, you are experiencing reality as it is, but you always have a conscious choice about how you can view things. And that is where the power of post-traumatic growth begins. So as we begin to find various paths, and there are many paths to post-traumatic growth, we really will begin to take personal ownership of our own journey. And I know from my own journey, it began with yoga. Yet I know many people who cannot stand yoga. And for me, meditation was very difficult. I had to start with a walking meditation, and I couldn't keep my mind from wandering for more than 30 seconds. My trauma had been so ingrained that one person even said that I perseverate more than any, or not perseverate, I ruminate more than any other person they'd ever met. Now, rumination is when you are thinking about the past, which is something depressed people do, and people suffering from trauma often do, is we keep ruminating about our painful experiences or looking into the past. And often that is us trying to make sense of something, to try to regain power or control in our lives. Now, that is the second part of his book. Now, the third part of his book, as I mentioned, is where we begin to put this post-traumatic growth mindset to work. How we can nurture growth and we can take it to the next level. And he concludes that section and then enters into something he refers to as the postscript, which is the Thrive model. Now, the Thrive model, he refers to it as the 6 signposts to facilitating post-traumatic growth. But he has 3 messages, and I really want to read those initial messages to you now, just so you have an overview and kind of understand these key messages that before you enter into the next audio section. And so these messages are designed for the victim as well as the family members who have experienced something. And they're designed to basically offer some guidance to help people manage their emotions and start taking the first steps towards growth. So I find it's very helpful to begin with, and I will, again, in the next section, we'll be going over all 3. The first is, all 3 in depth, you are not on your own. The second, trauma is a normal and natural process. And the third is that growth is a journey. And I believe those are very key things that are helpful to keep in mind. And if you need to write those down, you are not alone. You are not on your own. Trauma is a normal and natural process. Growth is a journey. And I hope this podcast series on post-traumatic growth with this particular book, What Doesn't Kill Us, The New Psychology of Post-Traumatic Growth by Stephan Joseph, is helpful for you. And I hope that Mike and my expertise and experience as a crisis therapist, I also work in the ER doing this immediate crisis work as well. But I hope that my expertise can help you find a way on your journey. So this is David StarrTouch signing off for today, and I'll connect with you on the next broadcast. Namaste.